we finished 30th place after promoting to the pro group, and I think it's an okay result. But we can see from 25th place or so onwards, the grid is quite close within a few seconds, and we're lacking that 10 seconds faster or so to get 25th place, which is get us about 1 extra million in revenue. And to earn points, which is potentially required to stay in the pro group, we're about a minute 30 away from the top contenders. But the tires are Yokohama and the Dunlop, which is around the 27-21 degree for the working range, which suits this race that occurred. And the Continental we use requires 37 degrees to get the performance, but it has better performance and durability. We can see our driver, unlike the previous few races where he keeps gaining motivation, he lost some because we finished quite poorly in the race. Well, I think it's an okay result. Our driver thinks a bit different, and because we've done some testing, we gained about 4 stamina. We can see our race earning is a bit low compared to previously, where we get about 10 million or so to 11 in mid-season, and only when we're winning we got the 12 million. And we saw that our driver made only 1 mistake, and we think this is because he has higher motivation now, where he used to make 2 mistakes in the race, and 1 less mistake really helped us gain a few positions in this race and earn us a million or so in the revenue. When we look at the race we play, we qualified at the back of the grid. And our race results were average but not necessarily bad. And another factor making this happen is because last season at the end, our rivals were exceptionally slow and everyone was trying to save money, so naturally I also joined in and downgraded a few parts here and there. That's why we aren't necessarily up to spec with the car performance. While this track is normal for overtaking, we saw that for last season, for normal tracks we don't really need to do 1 less pit stop, but because we're at the end of the grid again, it seems like we potentially are losing some time and getting hold up from doing the standard pit stop instead of doing 1 less. And we can see our driver only gained those few positions at the very end of the race and got to 30th place. If we look at our sponsors, after the first race, our new sponsor is relatively happy, and for the negotiations we chose the nose for which part to sponsor. We also train our driver again to reduce the weight, which is what we normally do. We got a very high conversion from test to R&D because we hired a technical director, and we already did some testing, and we only done 73 laps because our engine has very high wear and that's the max amount we can do. I used the calculator tool and entered the values, and I entered it into my own calculator tool and got that we can only do 73 laps before we hit 97 for the tire, for the car parts wear. copied the race results into my calculator tool, I saw that the car wear was quite good, or same as our calculator tool. But when we look at the lap times, we were quite slow in the first half, and our car was getting much quicker at the end of the race. So I decided to reduce our current wear compensation by 20 points. And we use a coefficient of 1.36, where previously we'd used 1.6. Our tire wear was also relatively accurate, within 1.5% and 5% for the normal temperature. I previously used 5.3%, but this time I used the 4.3% offset because normally the actual race wear is unlikely to reach the 5.3 high and normally a bit lower. For the race that we're going to do, we can see it's easy to overtake and it's power and handling dependent. And when we look at the past results, it shows that 2 pit stops were optimum. When I copied the track characteristic into my calculator tool, I found out it's 1.24 coefficient, which corresponds to 1 pit stop. And so I decided to do a 1 pit stop for this race, seeing that we potentially lost some time for the race that we've recently finished. And doing 1 pit stop less than the suggested amount doesn't hurt too much, but hurts a bit more than doing 1 extra pit stop. But since we are at the back of the grid, it's going to pay off to push things a bit and gamble a bit. And because I didn't anticipate doing a 1 pit stop, I did the testing considering we are doing a 2 pit stop strategy, and 1 pit stop would see us car wear 1 point higher. And to compensate for this, I calculated that we need to reduce the risk by 3 points or so to reduce the wear on our car. And we used the coefficient where we got for the clear track per risk that we have into our calculator tool, and we do 5 times that and get the 3 clear points for the risk reduction. I also entered the tire wear values from the calculator tool and decided to use the medium tires to do the 1 pit stop. I want to do 34 laps, then 35, because the actual laps you'll likely see as 34 and then 33 at the end, because you want to have 2 extra laps of fuel. And then we can see our calculator tool suggests we do a 1 pit stop, because with a 1 pit stop we still have quite low amount of fuel. Normally with 2 pit stops we can see 70 to 90 liters of fuel for a bit higher fuel consumption tracks, and 2 pit stops normally we see 115 to 120 to 130 or so. So I think that's one of the other reasons why our calculator wants us to do a 1 pit stop. We also did the testing for a car setup, and we found that for this track, the lap time is relatively wing split sensitive. We gained about 0.6 to 1.2 seconds from going from near the optimum to not. And from the past previous races, some of the tracks we gained less than 0.2 or 0.1 seconds from going to optimum wing split. And I think this reflects on the track somewhat accurately, because if you have done sim racing on the Fuji track, you can see this the high speed first corner, and then this is a mid speed, and this is the second high speed braking. And I think the two high-speed braking needs to have a relatively good wing split so you can trial brake into the corner and brake later. And I think that will gain us some lag time. And I think the game is trying to reflect that a bit. But other than these two high-speed braking corners, we want the correct wing split so our car is stable and we can push hard into the corner. I think all the other corners are relatively low speed and the wing split probably wouldn't matter that much. We can see it was wet in Q1 and it turned dry, and there's some potential for rain in the race. But since the percentage is so low, even if it does rain, it'll probably turn dry in quite a short time. So that's why we went with the one pit stop anyways, because we can make our driver to not pit. Only after 30 laps, when the weather changes, our driver pits. Because staying out potentially is the quicker option, even if we're doing softer tires and more pit stop. When the weather changes, you actually have to pit twice, and then you lose about 100 seconds, and 50 seconds is the average pit stop. It's not like you pit for the wet tires and you can go to the end of the race because the weather changes twice, so you lose 2 pit stops of time. That's why staying out would easily be the better option. You can see the weather turned dry for Q2. So I also went to my calculator tool and used this setup, which converts to dry and then the temperature compensation, and that's what we use for Q2. When we look at the qualifying, our lap times were quite average and were at the bottom of the grid, but we qualified relatively close to the other rivals using the same compound, the Continentals. We can see the Avon tires have the best performance in wet, but when it turned dry, this person didn't lose much lap time in qualifying. We can see the rivals about 0.6 seconds quicker or 1 second, and in Q2 he became 0.7 seconds slower, so it's about 1.5 seconds worth, 1 to 2 seconds worth of time loss for the Avon tires, because it's only good for wet and not dry. But the main reason he was able to qualify so well is because he has a good driver and his car is really quick. And I think that's the main point I'm trying to say, because Avons are only good in wet and it didn't help him much for the Q2 time, and he was still able to qualify quite well for Q2 in the wet, dry, where the tires don't work well. Of all qualified managers, we're still at the bottom percent or so. I think it's similar, if not slightly worse than last time. But I think the qualifying shows only so much, and we know our driver does better in the race and we have the higher fuel load. And we are expecting a potential good race because we are probably going to do our strategy well. And we can see nearly half or 30% of the grid had some driver they owned from last season. That's why they are so much quicker than us. And all of them had been in pro and amateur for many seasons with a lot of testing points and good staff and a lot of money. That's why there's some competition. We have one of the lowest staff overall because we want to save money on the facilities and only put money where it matters. And I think this is the better option compared to breaking the bank with expensive staff, which takes you nowhere because it only affects the amount of performance you get in testing, and it's very difficult to gain points once you have 10 or 13 points or so in the car performance. We saw surprisingly only half the grid done testing for the first race, and our car performance is still relatively similar because we haven't changed any parts from last race. But still we see that our car performance is only 1 bars and 2 bars less compared to top 8, so we're not hugely behind, and we're still 22nd or so in the money standings, which is great.